there's a big misunderstanding among many who write about the fort at Prospect Bluff about what really led to its construction. This fort and the intervention in West Florida by the British was really the result of a letter or an appeal that went out from a group of chiefs and primary warriors who lived down along the border of Spanish Florida. They were led by Thomas Perryman, who was the primary chief of the Apalachicola River Seminoles, his son William Perryman, and a number of other chiefs and warriors from Miccosukee, from Tallahassee, from some of the other towns and villages that were among the Lower Creek towns along the Chattahoochee River and in Spanish West Florida. They were not particularly concerned about their culture at that point. They weren't concerned about U.S. efforts to expand slavery down into this area. None of that really at this particular time that they wrote. What they were concerned about was this conflict that was erupting in the Creek Nation. The conflict was going on. A lot of people like to call this a conflict between the Upper Creeks, led by the prophet Josiah Francis, Peter McQueen, and others who were leading the Red Stick movement, and the Lower Creeks. That's not necessarily true either. It was really a conflict between a group that wanted to preserve their traditional way of life. They were led by the prophet Francis and McQueen and others, and a group that wanted to become more involved in kind of an Anglo style of life with plantation type culture that would embrace chattel slavery and a plantation lifestyle. That was led by the big warrior, who was also an Upper Creek leader, but this conflict erupted into civil war in the Creek Nation. And this civil war was really getting out of hand. It was a bloody conflict that was taking place. The Red Sticks were gaining the upper hand. A U.S. militia force or volunteer force from the Mississippi Territory intervened in this conflict at the Battle of Burnt Corn Creek, and there were now signs that it was going to spread across the frontiers of the Creek Nation into the European type settlements in the Mississippi Territory and Georgia and in Tennessee. And so the Perryman chiefs and others were very concerned that if the United States became involved in this conflict, that U.S. troops led by Andrew Jackson and others of his type would not differentiate between which towns were involved in the conflict and which side they were on. And so they were concerned that they would become targets of American forces. Some of them were supportive of the Red Stick side of this conflict, some of them were not, but they were all very afraid for what might happen to their towns and their people should the United States forces come calling. So they sent out a letter to the governor of the Bahamas, and in it they requested arms and ammunition and even the intervention of British troops. Both of the Perrymans and others had fought for the British during the American Revolution, and now they called for the British to come help them because they felt endangered. And so the British responded to their call for help by authorizing an intervention on the Apalachicola River, Apalachicola Bay in Florida, by sending colonial or Royal Marine forces there. They authorized the building of a supply depot on the Apalachicola River. That's what led to the establishment of this fort. It would, of course, lead to the development of a battalion of colonial Marines who were predominantly black colonial Marines, although there were some white Bahamians and white Americans who joined this force. There were some Hispanics, there were others. But the primary goal of this was to organize Red Stick forces, to organize Creeks, to organize Seminoles into sort of a light infantry fighting force, numbering into the thousands. And the original call came out for help from Creeks, from Seminoles, from Miccosukees, from Uchis, and from others who were living down in this area.